We should also be out here celebrating what happened in Kalamazoo and celebrating what happened in Washington, where pro-LGBT referenda passed in both of those places. That's a huge, huge victory for us.
That the administration did nothing to fight against question 1. Organizing for America, formerly Obama for America, emailed Maine voters twice in the last couple of days and said nothing.
Sees themselves as someone who is going to continue to organize and build on a week-to-week basis. That's what it took black people in the South to win civil rights. We did not win our equality with one big march on Washington. We won it through years of sit-ins, of people facing dogs and police, people facing down.
All of us here today are angry that once again a well-funded campaign of lies and fear-mongering has succeeded in getting a referendum to strip same-sex couples of their hard-won rights. These were the same right-wing religious and corporate players that were behind the Prop 8 outrage. The support for LGBT rights in this country has been steadily rising and will continue to do so. And Maine also clarifies that this is not a race issue. The black population of Maine is tiny, and so this loss can't be pinned on them in an effort to divide us and divert us from who the real enemy is. After his inauguration, Barack Obama promised us to use the bully pulpit to urge states to treat same-sex couples with full equality in their family and adoption laws about question 1. In fact, they asked them to, in 1968, when the Supreme Court overturned interracial marriage bans in states, support for that issue was 20%. We have a lot more support from that now, and we don't have to wait another minute. Thank you very much.
Today we cannot view Maine as a loss. We must view it as a setback and another challenge to overcome the fight for national equality. Back in the 60s, our fathers, our parents, our brothers, our sisters came up with new and creative ways to protest the war, to protest their civil liberties. It's time to bring that back into the year 2009 and further. No longer can we just march. We must come up with creative ways to actually show them that our voices will be heard. Thomas Jefferson once said that laws and institutions must go hand in hand with the progress of the human mind. As that becomes more developed, more enlightened, and as new discoveries are made, new truths discovered, and manners and opinions change with the changing of circumstances, institutions must advance, also to keep pace with the times. Those words are inscribed on the memorial on Thomas Jefferson just down the street here in our nation's capital. No longer must we remain silent. We must take what happened in Maine and in California and move it to all the other countries and all the other cities. As LA, New York, San Francisco, and San Diego join us tonight in protesting what happened in Maine.
In my pocket, I still carry my California driver's license, which means that exactly 1 year ago today, we voted on my right to get married. And apparently I lost, because apparently my rights are subject to a vote. And that's something which I am happy to see on my campus and at the campuses of everybody I've ever spoken to, is something that my generation will not stand for. You need to talk to people. And if it means you have to go to the people from your college Republicans, or you need to go to the Young America's Foundation, the people who you know disagree with you, that's the conversation you need to have most. You need to make this an issue no one can ignore.
So, of course, we're out here protesting the vote that just happened in Maine, but I also want to point out that we should also be out here celebrating what happened in Kalamazoo and celebrating what happened in Washington, where pro-LGBT referenda passed in both of those places. That's a huge, huge victory for us. And I think what the failure of Maine highlights, the failure of Maine really highlights why those of us who were out here on October 11th marched in the National Equality March. 200,000 of our brothers and sisters were out here marching because we wanted to say, and what we're still saying, is that unless we fight for our rights on a federal level, they will continue to take them away on the state level. And so, right. And let's not forget the effects of the National Equality March, right? The night before, the president of this country, Barack Obama, who could have played a critical role in getting voters to vote no on question 1, he was at the HRC addressing the HRC and the LGBT community. That is because of the National Equality March, the press that it received, and that is because of the results of people like us who rallied across the country throughout the year to say no and to fight against attacks on LGBT people. And a few days out, in the weeks after the National Equality March, the HIV ban was lifted, the hate crimes legislation was passed, anti-hate crimes legislation was passed. These are reversals of the U.S. government's position over the last 30, 40 years, and those are huge victories for our side. And also, let's also not forget in California, where Proposition 8 passed a year ago today. Proposition 8, which set off, the organizing for the National Equality March, and which has set off protests across the country. Arnold Schwarzenegger, in the day after the march, recognized Harvey Milk and recognized marriages, out-of-state marriages, and that is because of the effects of the National Equality March and because people like us have protested. We need to remember Maine. We need to celebrate the victories of Kalamazoo and Washington, and we also need people to organize locally and nationally. With Equality Across America, we're trying to bring together people from across the country to build a national democratic grassroots organization that takes on the fight for LGBT liberation, build a fighting organization locally that can win marriage in DC and that can fight on a national level so that our rights are not taken away. So thank you everybody for coming out tonight, and definitely stick around and talk to those of us who are in Equality Across America if you're interested in continuing the struggle for LGBT liberation in DC.
I just did a head count, and by my count, we have somewhere between 100 and 120 people out here, and that happened in a few hours' notice. So imagine what we can do if each and every person who came to this action sees themselves as someone who is going to continue to organize and build on a week-to-week basis. That's what it took black people in the South to win civil rights. We did not win our equality with one big march on Washington. We won it through years of sit-ins, of people facing dogs and police, people facing down a racist political establishment that would promise to give equality and not deliver it. And we have to deliver a strong message to those in power who could stand for equality. As none other than Cynthia Nixon said at the National Equality March, Obama, we will not wait. We need to go beyond words to action. Thank you for saying you're going to end Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Do it now. Thank you for saying you respect diversity of people's social and sexual practices. Stand up for equality each and every time, not just when you think it's politically convenient. And we have to say to them that you will not take our money or our votes for granted if you do not stand up for justice and equality each and every time it's right to fight. And we have to remember the change comes because people like us organize and fight. It does not come because of well-meaning people at the top. It comes because of people like us who force the political establishment to listen to what we have to say.
With that being said, we will no longer acknowledge November 4th as the day that Proposition 8 passed. We will no longer mourn for the ideologies that have in some sort of way made their way to the top once again. We will walk away and remember that each individual standing here, whether few or many in number, matter just as much as the masses that gathered at the National Equality March. We will no longer become sad and sombered by the disheartened comments and the discouragement of other people who may not be able to identify with our cause or who have been fighting too long and are burned out. We will leave here today renewed. We will leave here today knowing that silence will be no more because each one of our voices makes a difference. Today I charge each individual standing here, whether you came from work, whether you planned on being here, whether you just happened to stand by, do not be quiet anymore. Make a movement towards equality on your job. Make a movement towards equality at your school. Make a movement towards equality at your home. But do not allow hatred and bigotry to pass in your presence anymore. With that being said, I thank you all for coming, And I welcome you all to activism, because each and every individual standing here today is a solidarity activist.